So I'm really pleased with the response. So, and I know most of you, not necessarily personally, but I've seen everybody around, I think, shared some stuff with most people. That's really nice. Yeah, so what I want to go through today is that how Tony, who's on the call, and I have used AI agents over the last few years to develop test scripts. And we do more than that, but I will stay focused on the test scripts. Okay. You'll see how that goes. Sorry, I missed something there. Okay. Yeah, if anybody does have a question, I'm not able to see hands up, so just do jump straight in. Quite happy with that. We'll just keep it really informal. It's just us lot. So if you've got a question, if I'm going too fast, do say, and I'll recap or do it, whatever, or I'll answer a question there and then. So, a bit about my background then, for those that don't know me so well. Started my career as a consultant for Pricewaterhouse and did lots of different projects. My first project was in housing, implemented first housing as it was at the time, but then moved into different sectors. I was head of test and QA at a number of different investment banks. And then I set up a test and QA consultancy, had customers like Microsoft, Capita, and Kia, who had outsourced a lot of their testing to me. And that's where I really got a lot of exposure into different housing management systems. Okay, so did a project for Barnet Council, did reviews at Civica, and implemented NEC. Did lots of different housing management systems. But then in 2018, I set up FuzzLab, and FuzzLab was our first incarnation of trying to use AI agents, and that was to do customer self-service. It was a chatbot, but had modern integrated into the back end of the housing management system, so customers could book a repair if they wanted to, or get their rent statement if they wanted to. And that's when I first partnered with NEC. We put it into Gateshead, and that was hard though then, because the technology for using AI agents was pretty rudimental, and so things have moved on a lot. And then roll on a few years, couldn't sell enough of those agents. People weren't interested in AI agents at that time. Implemented NEC for Swindon Borough Council. Typically, as is typical, we didn't have enough people on the team, didn't have enough testers, didn't have enough business analysts, and so used my background of how to make projects successful. So quality-led projects, what we do is using best practices from start to finish to make sure you get good outcomes and go live on time and under budget, hopefully. The challenge with that is, particularly in housing, but in all sectors, we've never got enough money in the budget. We've never got enough people on the team. And so a solution to that, as Tony and I saw it, was to start to use AI to help the BA who needed another couple of BAs do more work. Same with the test analyst, needed more test analysts than we had. How can we use AI to do that? So we forged this model back in 2024. 2025, we used that as an entry for Swindon in the Housing Tech Awards. We were finalists and saved hundreds and hundreds of hours on that project. Since then, we've been developing the model a bit further. So by the end of this session, you'll know how a test pack goes from a blank page to a useful, reviewed, approved artifact using AI agents. And hopefully you'll be able to take this, what we're showing you, and run it back where you are and get benefit as well from what we've done. So first thing that we did that you need to know is we have a team of agents. It's not just a test analyst or a business analyst that you're going to need, because you're going to want to make sure that the instructions for your agent that you're using are discreet and they're as skilled as they possibly can be. We've found that you need to have multiple agents all doing a small part of the job. So we've broken it up into the team, a typical team, and the roles that you'd have on that team. Trying to get one agent to do everything is it's not going to work. You end up with errors. You end up with outputs that aren't good enough to really be used on the project. So we've now got a team of agents that we use, each doing a specific role, each trained in a specific skill. So for this one, we're going to use those two, the business analyst and the test analyst agent. But the key is, and please do take note of this, don't start with a test. The testing is a job to do. It's to confirm that the build has delivered the requirements, and the test validates that that's true. So if there's no requirement to start with, you've got nothing to confirm. And this is where so many people get into bother, because they haven't taken the time to write down the requirements, or don't have the people on the team to write down the requirements that they're trying to get the system to meet. The instinct is to jump straight into the test script. It feels faster, but it fails. And every methodology, even NECs, starts with getting the requirements right. Now, often it doesn't happen on a project, and that methodology quickly gets thrown out the window. But in my experience, getting the outcome that you want from a project starts every single time with the requirements. And if you don't have them, you will end up getting into bother. With AI, you're just going to get into bother quicker. Okay. And so the method that we use is to identify the functional and the non-functional, but for this, we'll just focus on the functional requirements. Non-functional mean performance and security and your integrations, but capture your functional requirements. And we do that as user stories. And I'll explain what that is in a bit if you're not familiar. And then you get your test and you trace each test back to a requirement. So that's your starting point and rolls back to your end point as well. So there's two routes in. If you do have requirements, you can feed them into the test analyst agent. Ideally, I think, as stories and acceptance criteria. And again, I'll explain what they are. And then you can get straight to your test case generation. Now, in my experience, most people don't have those. And so if you don't have them yet, first stage is going to be to get your BA agent. And I'll show you how to create those, so don't worry. Creates your requirements for review, and the review is important. We'll get to that too. You can reverse engineer them if you don't have them. You can use things like your solution design document or your user guides or some tests that you already have, but that then becomes your start point to use. So before I move on, I'll pause. Any questions on that? Okay. Good. Just make sure. So 10 minutes in. So anatomy of a good requirement. A user story, I think, is the best way to write requirements. It keeps it consistent, and it has these three elements to it. So as an actor, as a user, a type of user, I want to do something so that I get an outcome. And then you confirm that that has been achieved with an acceptance criteria in the format of, given a condition, when something happens, then this is the result that I want to see. So I'll make that become a little bit more real. As a scheduler, in this case, I want to schedule an inspection with a type and a target date so that a surveyor has a clear pipeline of work. Okay. Now you can build these up. So there's going to be many user stories for the scheduler, and then there's going to be many user stories for other actors within the organization as well. You'll have some as a scheduler, I want to do something so that I can complete the job. And then you'll have your acceptance criteria, or multiple acceptance criteria for that one user story. So it'll be given an open request when it's scheduled with a type and a target date, then it appears in the assigned surveyor's work pipeline. Okay. So we built up a set of requirements in this format, and then we can say at the end, well, if each of these have passed the test successfully and those acceptance criteria have all been met, then I know I'm ready to go live. So once we've got that, we pump that into the test analyst agent, and we get the test cases out. And again, we've told our agents, and this is something that I'd urge you to do, the anatomy of a good test case. So test case has got these 5 things. It's got an objective, what it is you're trying to achieve. It's got your preconditions, what you need to set up in the system that you're testing so that you can do the test. So you'd have an open inspection, you'd be logged in, and you'd have a bunch of contractors or surveyors there ready to assign a job to. You'd have your data, so you've got your properties in there, you've got all of your contractors, your inspection types set up, and then you want your steps. Okay, so having all of this is the anatomy of a good test. Now, often this gets skipped, right, in the real world, just because it takes a long time to do. This is the beauty of AI, right? It allows us to do things properly, whereas perhaps before we just didn't have either the team, the time, or necessary skills and knowledge to do it. Now, quality-led projects, what we do is try to do everything properly, but we've always known that if you've only got half the complement of the team, if you haven't got a test manager and a tester, and you're relying on the business to do a lot of your testing, you're not necessarily going to get the best outcome. And so we're seeing this really as a solution to a problem, and that problem being that we never have enough people on the team. And then you've got the expected results, and again, your AI can tell you what hopefully your test should achieve, so that once you've done your test, you know whether it's passed or failed. So I'm just going to pause there. I'll come back to this, and I'm just going to show you what the output was. I don't want to do a demo because it's not a product demo, but just so you can see then the output of this. So this is for assets management, for example. We've got, it's been broken down into the various parts of the module, and then we've got some high level requirements, our user stories. So as an asset officer, I want to change an asset's parent so that mismatches in the hierarchy can be corrected, right? And so then we've got our different acceptance criteria for that, and we've got a whole document full of those. Then there's the test case one here. Each of those maps to a test case, and we've documented that in those 5 areas that I mentioned. We've got our preconditions, we've got our test data that we're going to need, we've got the steps to execute, and then our expected results. And then you can document where it's passed or failed as well. And again, we've got loads of these. So what we've found is that because time is tight, we typically end up with more requirements and more tests than a human can physically test. So in which case, then we go back around that loop and we ask the AI to prioritize the requirements for us so that we can prioritize the tests. Let me just go back to this then. Any questions on that? Okay, so this is key now. So let's just assume that we've got a set of requirements out of the AIs, we've got a set of tests out of the AIs. This is now how I'm going to show you how we did that. The most important thing, certainly in housing, is what made that safe. And so what are the things that you need to be aware of before you go down this journey? So I'm sure you've heard of the AI hallucinating things, where it's, gives you a plausible answer, but it's simply wrong. So this first generation, not necessarily the first generation, but this early generation of AI that we're using does get stuff wrong. It has errors and it has omissions. It just misses stuff out. So if you've got an incomplete requirement or you've got an edge case that's not captured, you need to be able to mitigate that risk. Data oversharing is another risk. So how do you stop the AI using a document or sharing a document that it shouldn't? That'll become a bit more obvious because we've connected it to the SharePoint. Okay, so we've made it so that the AI inherits the user's capabilities on SharePoint, and permissions, I should say. And then no model training. What we don't want is customer data leaving or anything being used to go and retrain the LLMs, the large language models that AI uses. And importantly, that we don't just trust the output, over reliance that, look, it's a really comprehensive document, it looks good, I had a quick read through, and rubber stamping it to sign it off. Got to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, so they're the 4 major risks. We've created our own governance pack. Tony's created the governance pack to make sure that everything is controlled. So we've got 11 documents, 11 templates that we use to control things. So we've got a policy, we've got the approved tools that we're allowed to use. We've got a use log. So if you've done something using AI, somebody comes and asks for evidence of how something's created, then you've got the use log. And there's 11 things that we use to control how we're doing it. If you've got questions about that, just do let me know. I'm more than happy to share some of that information as well. And this is the bit about the reviewer, right? So we've got those structured test cases, each with objectives, each with data and steps. But when we've been doing this on projects, particularly at Swindon, we could make sure that every assumption was validated. We asked the AI what assumptions it made. What we found was often the AI came up with that example that I used, the scheduler needs to do something. And then as we were reviewing it, it was like, okay, well, fine, but actually so does this other person as well. So does the surveyor need to be doing that bit as well. So does the contractor need to be doing that. So they changed stuff, the reviewers, we had a team of reviewers, and we made sure that within our roles and responsibilities matrix, there was a named person who was still accountable for making sure that the requirements were right, and another person that was responsible for making sure the tests were right. And they were accountable and held to account. You need to make sure that's the case. And then a bit more technical stuff under the bonnet, what we did. So one of the first things you're going to need to do is what AI is allowed on your project. We've experimented with different ones. Copilot typically being used in the housing domain, and that's got some cool features. It inherits your tenant boundaries, so it keeps your data controlled. And Microsoft does that out of the box. We have found that Copilot has got some limitations. I don't think the AI is as good as ChatGPT and Claude. And that's a bit of a problem. Claude is really good for formatting documents. Those documents that I showed you were formatted by Claude. Copilot doesn't do that well at all. ChatGPT is really broad and it comes back with some really good detailed knowledge, but it has its limitations when you want to link it into your Microsoft domain at work. And I'll go into that now. So what we decided was for housing, for local authorities and housing associations, even with the limitations that Microsoft has, the benefits kind of balance or outweigh those at all quite nicely. So what you're able to do, what we've done with Copilot, is build up a knowledge bank, and I'll show you that in a bit more detail, so that it becomes personalized to your project, your organization. You can interact with Copilot either on Copilot as a conversation or within Microsoft Teams as well. So you can build it into your Microsoft Teams site and just have a chat with the agent. That's quite nice. It's a nice feature. And you can integrate it with your SharePoint as well. So even when a project is finished and everybody's moved on, well, your agent stays consistent and your agent has still got access to your SharePoint and all of that knowledge is retained. And then your agent just gets more effective and better and more knowledgeable over time. So even though within housing, I know we've got a lot of people coming and going, a large churn rate. Well, let's create some consistency and let's create some knowledge within the agents themselves. Now, there are two things called Copilot. There's Copilot that most people use, the Copilot agents, and there's Copilot Studio agents. Now, we've used Copilot Studio agents. There's a number of reasons for that, but ultimately it comes down to they're more controllable and more sophisticated, let's say. So, and that's what we've used to create those projects. So this is Copilot Studio. I'll just tab over. This is Copilot Studio. Copilot Studio allows you to build your agents. So as I said, we've got all of these different agents that we've built. So a procurement one, a training and a test analyst one, integration one. And they've got these 4 things. We've got knowledge, tools, agents, well, more than 4, but I'll talk about these 4 here. Those 4 building blocks, right? So if you've been using any of the agents or any of those Claude and ChatGPT chatbots, well, to get the best results, you need to be able to write a really good prompt. And those prompts are key to getting the outputs that you want. If you're exposing your team and your users perhaps to the agents, well, there's a risk that they're not going to be able to write those prompts well enough to get the control and the good results that you need, right? So we've built that into those prompts into the instructions of the agents. We've told it how to behave, what to do, what not to do, and it's the biggest quality lever that there is. We've given it instructions and boundaries of how to operate. We've then given it the knowledge bank. Now, this is key, right? This is also super important, because you don't want your agents to go to the open internet to go and tell you what you need to do. So how do you control that? I'll show you what we've done. We've given it 5 levels. So we've got some shared knowledge, some domain knowledge, which is housing. We've got EC knowledge, or whatever housing management system you're using. And we've built this into 5 layers. Then we've got your organization knowledge, your policies, and your project knowledge. It's got context of what you're trying to achieve with this project, where you're at a specific point in time. So you give it this knowledge, and then it's able to use that effectively to be able to give you the results that you want. So as an example, if I go into domain knowledge, we've told it all of the UK legislation, all of the policies that it needs to use. So we've got all of the UK legislation for, well, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and all of the housing acts there. We've got Human Rights Act. So every response, every requirement, every test refers to this knowledge to make sure that we're keeping it within the legal boundaries that we need to. Any regulatory requirements here we've got as well. So we've built this up, and we're now confident that when we get stuff out, as well as if you've given it your within your product knowledge, if you've given it your if you've given it your solution design document or your user guides and any other documentation that you've got from your supplier, you know that your solution, the output for your requirements and for your test, is going to be accurate for the system under test. Also within Copilot Studio, you can use tools and connectors. So you can tell it to be able to put a document on the SharePoint, or read a document from the SharePoint, or read a Word document or an Excel document. Excel's a little bit trickier, which is crazy with Copilot. Claude does it really well, but Copilot doesn't do it so well. So you need to be a bit careful with that. Your prompt, though, still is important. So giving it the context, making sure that you ask for the right thing, and you've given it tight boundaries still with you, even though you've got your instructions, ask specifically for what you want. And what we've found is if you build it up over time, so I'm saying don't go straight to the tests. If you want to create a test pack for assets, the first thing is to say, right, tell me what the functional areas are of assets. Look in the solution design document and tell me what things that I need to build in here. Right, now I've got that, fantastic. Give me my requirements, please, for this area, and build it up bit by bit. Don't jump straight to give me every single requirement for assets, please. It's not going to work. So you build it up, and then once you've got each little bit, you then move on to your test cases.
4 minutes to go, Scott.
Yeah, thanks, mate. So why does this work? It does speed things up. And if you've given it that training and that knowledge, then you're going to make sure that you've got accuracy in there as well. It's a proven model. We've been doing this now for a number of years, and so we've been refining it as we go, working with specialists, working with the business, so you can trust that this model works, and you've got that governance, and you get your better outcome. Projects work faster and better. So yeah, so I'll wrap up. I'll answer some questions if you've got any questions, but if you want to take it forward, just give us a call. More than happy to help out. If it's just how to get started or get your controls in place, We're doing some pilots this year if you want to try it out. Also, we're trying out, we've got documents on demand. So if you want to test script written, let us know and we can use our models and give you that back, and that's on a fixed price basis. So there's the contact details. I will stop.